Hey everybody, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may happen to be. My name is Jeff Zentner. I am the author of The Serpent King and Goodbye Days and Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee. And I am coming to you live today from my home office where I spend quite a bit of my time these days. In addition to writing books, I also work a day job, and so I work from home here. And it's a really great pleasure to get to talk to you guys. I'm sorry we can't do this in person, the world being what it is, and I hope all of you are staying safe and healthy and figuring out ways to keep from climbing the walls. So what I was going to do today was I was going to tell you guys about how I became an author. I was going to tell you guys about my writing journey, how I came to become a young adult author, and then I was going to tell you a little bit about how I came up with the idea for my most recent book, and I was going to read you a little bit from this book, one of my favorite parts. So let me just talk about how I became an author. My story goes back to when I was about 17 years old. I was in love with two things. I was in love with books, and I was in love with music. I was an avid reader, and I absolutely loved music. And I was starting to get to a point in my life where I was feeling hungry to create art. It wasn't enough for me anymore just to passively sit back and consume art. I wanted to actually create art. So I figured if I'm going to create art, I'm going to do one of the things that I love, either books or music. But here's the thing with books. I didn't know where books came from. I met my first published author when I was 17 years old. Or I'm sorry, when I was 33 years old, you guys. So what that means is that for most of my life, I didn't know where books came from. I had no idea what sort of people wrote books. And when you don't know what kind of people write books, and you're a kid who loves books, you put books on a pedestal. And so you imagine books just kind of descending from ivory towers, carried by teams of doves in baskets on silken threads. And at the top of those ivory towers, there are people in tweed jackets and bow ties, and they're typing novels and, putting them in the baskets for the doves to carry back down to earth. So I thought that that's where books came from. And because I was not that sort of person, I didn't think that writing books was something that somebody like me could do. So what did I do? I went out and I bought myself a guitar, took it home, taught myself how to play. And I practiced for hours a day until my fingers bled, until my wrists ached, just hours and hours a day. So by my early 20s, I was getting pretty good at playing the guitar. And so I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, which is where I live today, sitting here in my house that used to be owned by Vince Gill. It was his first house in Nashville. He has since upgraded, but Vince Gill used to own this house. So I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and I start playing shows. I start playing solo, and pretty soon I put a band together. And we have a real good time. We go on tour. We play festivals, we record albums, we do, all the things you need to do to be a professional musician. And this is my plan. I'm going to be a professional rock musician. This is what I'm going to do with my life. So we have a great time. So I do that all through my 20s. I hit age 30. And when I hit age 30, one night I'm lying there in bed and I have one of these epiphanies. And I don't know if you guys have ever had one of those random epiphanies where just out of nowhere, the universe opens its windows to you and allows you to appreciate some great, hitherto unappreciated truth. I don't know if you've ever had one of those epiphanies, but that's what I had when I was laying in bed one night. And I realized that very few of the people who I listened to, very few of my favorite musicians, had made it big in music after age 30. So a lot of them were still making music well past their 30s. I mean, Steven Tyler, I think, turned 97 last year, and he's, still up on stage wearing lots of scarves and leather pants and doing his thing. But he got his start, he got his big break in music before age 30. Now here I was, I was 30 and I hadn't had my big break in music. So what does that mean for me? Well, does that mean that this dream that I've had for so long is just going to die? Well, okay, but I'm not a quitter, right? So I keep going. I keep plugging along until I'm 33 and I take stock again. And that's when I really realize that for as few people make it big in music after age 30, even fewer still make it big in music after age 33. And that's where I realized that sometimes in life your dreams just die. They just die. That's all there is to it. There's, you struggle, you fight for something, and it just doesn't come to pass. And that's all there is to it. But here's the thing with dreams. Dreams are like a form of energy. They don't just die. They change form, and you have to look for the way that they change form. So here I am. I'm 33. I've got this, I've got these dead dreams, and so I go and I start volunteering at a music camp for teenagers called Tennessee Teen Rock Camp. And there's a sister group called Southern Girls Rock Camp. And it's just like it sounds like. It's a camp where we teach kids how to be rock musicians. I would teach kids how to play rock guitar. We'd put them in bands, show them how to play in a band, teach them how to record themselves, teach them how to write songs, all of those good things. Everything you need to know to be a professional rock musician, we would teach them how to do. And at the end of the week, we'd put them up on stage in one of Nashville's big venues, and they would perform with full lights and sound for a huge crowd of paying audience members. And it was so magical and sacred to me to get to see that happen. It was so, so cool. And I would just sit backstage and I'd watch my kids up there on stage and just, I'd be emotional. I'd be, on the edge of tears. And it took me a while to figure out what it was exactly that moved me so profoundly about that experience of working with these teenagers. And it is this. I love the way that teenagers love the art that they love. To me, that is so special. It's so beautiful. It's so magical. Think about when you were a teenager. Maybe you're a teenager now. Think about how you love the art that you love, or love the art that you loved, how it defined you, how it was part of who you were, part of how you related to the world. And it made me want to make art for young adults. But now here was my problem. I knew how to make one kind of art, the kind of art that I had devoted my life to, which is music. I didn't know how to make any other kind of art. And it takes a long time to get good enough at an artistic discipline to be able to, put your art out into the world. So I knew how to make one kind of art, which was music. And I did not know how to make the kind of music that gets marketed and sold and consumed by young adults. Had no idea how to do it. And plus, I was too old to make it big in that part of the music world anyway. By the time I was having this realization, I was like 35 years old, right? Way too old to make the kind of music that gets marketed to young adults. Young adults are out there listening to Billie Eilish and, Post Malone and Ariana Grande, people who are in their 20s. I was way past my prime for making that kind of art. So what am I going to do? How am I going to reach the audience I want to reach? So I have two choices. Either I can just, one, walk away from another dream and just say, you know what? I'm just going to die hungry on this one. Sometimes you just die hungry. You don't get to do everything you want to do in life. Sometimes you just have to, fold your tent and walk away. So that's option one. Option two is I can try to rebuild my creative life from scratch and create a new creative life that will somehow allow me to reach young adults. Well, spoiler alert, because I'm talking to you now, I chose option B. And what did I choose? I chose young adult books. Because I still kept track of the world of books. I still loved books. I still moved in the world of books. And I noticed that there was this huge new category of books called young adult books. And I thought, I bet young adult books get marketed to young adults. I bet young adults read young adult books. Now, I'm not trying to brag about my intelligence here, but that did occur to me. So I thought, I'm going to try to write a young adult book. So what had changed at that point that I now thought that I could write books? Because remember, I told you when I was a teenager, it was the people in the ivory towers who wrote books. It wasn't people like me. It was the people in the ivory towers. What changed? 3 things changed. First of all, I was doing a lot of writing in my day job, because here's what I didn't tell you. When my dreams of music died, I went to the place where dreams go to die, which is law school, and I got a law degree, and I became a lawyer. I became a prosecutor for the state of Tennessee, prosecuting murder cases, rape cases, all that wild stuff. In that job, I was doing a lot of writing, and I was getting a lot of practice, and I realized that if I could write something that kept a panel of judges engaged through 100 pages of legal maneuvering, maybe I had what it took to write a book that would keep young adults engaged. So that's the first thing that occurred to me, is I was doing a lot of writing, and I thought maybe good writing is good writing, and maybe you can transfer the skill set to fiction. So that's the first thing that fell into place. Second thing that fell into place is I met my first published author. Guess who it was? It was Stephanie Perkins, who wrote Anna and the French Kiss. She was a friend of mine when I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, and I knew her when she was working on her very first book. And when she would tell me about it, I'd kind of smile and nod and say, yeah, that's cool. I'm sure you'll publish that book. The whole time I was thinking, no way are you going to publish that book, because it's the people in the ivory towers who publish books. It's not people like you and me, right? Right? We know this, right? But she didn't get that memo. So she went out and published this book and became a New York Times best-selling, beloved young adult author. And I just watched it happen in real time, right in front of my face. That got me thinking, if people tend to hang out with like sort of people, right? So if this person who is an author saw fit to hang out with me, maybe I'm an author and I just don't know it yet. So that's the second thing that fell into place. Here's the third thing that fell into place, though, and this one is the most important. I was no longer afraid to fail, because I had already failed. I had failed at music. I was a big failure at music. And it was fine. I was fine. I was still alive, still walking around, still, living my life. I survived it. I survived failure. It's okay. Because here's the thing with failure. Nobody's really keeping track of your failures. And if they are, then that's a failure on their part, right? Because people who have a lot going on in their lives don't keep track of other people's failures. They do their own thing. Nobody's worried about your failures but you. You're the only one keeping track. So if you can get over your own failures, then you're golden. What do you have to worry about? The only thing keeping me from trying to write a young adult book was the fear of failing again. But who cares? Who cares? Nobody would care. Nobody's keeping track. So I decided to try to write a young adult book. So I go back to my songwriting catalog and I come up with a couple of songs that I think have more of a story to them than I had told in the original 3 or 4 minutes of the song. And I can't decide which one of these songs I want to turn into a book, so I decide to mush them both together and put them in the same book, because nobody's going to read this book, right? I mean, I'm probably going to fail, so it's going to be fine. Then I need characters. So I figure out the types of people who fascinate me, because I figure if I'm going to write a book about somebody, they better be people who fascinate me. That's what keeps me turning pages in a book, is if I'm fascinated in the characters. I can't get enough of them. I can't dwell long enough in their lives. So I came up with characters who fascinated me. And then I went to write the book, and I realized that I don't know how to write a novel. I've never had a creative writing class in my life. Never had a single one. There are many, many weeks out of the year in which I teach more creative writing classes than I have ever had in my life. So I didn't know how to write a novel. So I figured the best way to write a novel would be to cheat. And here is how I decided to cheat. I was going to have somebody else write my book for me. And that somebody else was going to be my characters. Because here's the deal. I could never sit down across from any one of you and say to you, let me tell you your story. Let me tell you who you are, where you come from, where you've been, where you're going, what you desire, what you fear, who you love, who loves you, any of that. I can't tell you any of that stuff. What I can do is I can sit across from you and I can listen to you tell me who you are, who you love, who loves you, where you're going, where you've been, what you desire, what you fear, all the things that make you a person. I can sit down across from you and I can listen to that and I can write that out. And then that becomes a story. That's just naturally a story. If I can do that with real people, maybe I can do it with fictional people, as long as they're real to me. And how do people become real to us? Through hearing their voices. People become real to us when we can hear their voices. So I invite my characters into my head for 3 or 4 months until I can hear their voices, just speaking to me, telling me who they are, telling me everything about themselves, until I know that when I go to write this book, it's going to be them telling me their story and not me telling them their story. They're going to drag me through this story by the hand. They're going to tell me everything about themselves that I need to know, and I just need to write it down. So now, I've got an idea for a book. I've got characters. After 3 or 4 months, I know these characters so well that they are going to pull me through this book and tell me who they are. But now here's my problem. Where am I going to get the time to write this novel, right? Where am I going to get the time? I don't have the ability to sit in a gazebo by a lake and watch the sunlight dance on the water and type the great American novel while I, sip my glass of bourbon. Don't drink unless you're 21. Or, smoke my pipe. Don't smoke or vape ever. It's bad for you. So when am I going to do that? When am I going to get the time to write this novel? Well, one day I get on the bus to go to work. I ride the bus to and from work in downtown Nashville because it gives me time to do other things. I can read, I can zone out. I don't have to be behind the wheel of a car paying attention to traffic. So one day I get on the bus and I pull out my iPhone. This is the phone. And I open up a Google document and I entitle it The Serpent King. And I start typing with my right thumb all the way into work. I get to work, I put my phone away, get down to, the dirty business of murder and work until lunchtime. Lunchtime comes around, I pull my phone back out and I start typing again. Do that all through lunch. Lunchtime gets over, put my phone away, get back down to murder, do it till the end of the day, get back on the bus, pull my phone back out and start typing again with my right thumb. I do that all the way home. So I do that for 25 days and I come up with the first draft of this book called The Serpent King. And I see you commenting, we love The Serpent King. Thank you all. Y'all are amazing. So I come up with the first draft of this book called The Serpent King. This is about 3 teenagers growing up in a small town in rural Tennessee. It's about their desires, their hopes, their fears, their triumphs, their tragedies. It's kind of like The Outsiders meets Perks of Being a Wallflower meets Looking for Alaska, if you're into that sort of thing. So this book was published in March of 2016. My publisher said, you know what, Jeff, we really like The Serpent King. We'd like you to do another book for us. So I said, sure, I'll do another book for you. So I get my phone back out and I start typing again with my right thumb and I come up with this book called Goodbye Days. This is my second book. This is about a young man who's struggling with grief and guilt after an accident that killed his 3 best friends, which he thinks he may have caused by texting them while they were driving to come pick him up. So this was my second book published in March of 2017. Now, my publisher said, Jeff, we really like those first 2 books. We want you to do another book. So I start looking around, what can I do for a 3rd book? Well, I've done 2 pretty sad books so far, so I want to do a funny book next time. I want to write a comedy. I like comedies. So what am I going to do for a comedy? So I'm looking around for ideas, and one night I get home from a buddy's, like a pre-wedding dinner / bachelor party, but bachelor party makes it sound like it was much more wild than it was. We hung out eating pizza and playing basketball. But I came home, and it was a Saturday night. I just turned on the TV and just started flipping through channels. Now that is something that I never, ever do. Why do I never do that? Because I have every streaming service. I've got my Netflix, I've got my Hulu, I've got my Amazon Prime, I've got my HBO, I've got my Disney Plus, I've got all that stuff. why am I going to sit down and just go flipping through channels, like hoping I get to see, the last 30 minutes of The Devil Wears Prada, which is always on television, by the way. That movie is always on television. Turn on your TV right now, flip through the channels, The Devil Wears Prada will be playing right now. So, as I'm flipping through channels on this Saturday night, I come to the Nashville Public Access Station. Nashville has a public access art station where you can see like public domain performances of the Bolshoi Ballet and all this kind of stuff. But instead of the usual thing they have on this public access station, songwriters and bad interview shows and black and white ballet performances, they're showing this 70s horror movie with this weird kind of spooky 1970s horror movie music. So I'm really intrigued, right? And so I keep watching. And where the movie would normally cut to a commercial break, it's not a commercial break because it's public access. What it does instead is it cuts to these two girls on this cheap looking stage, and their names are Marlena Midnight and Robin Graves, and they're hosting this movie. They're horror hosts on a show called Midnight Mausoleum out of some place in rural Iowa. I can't remember now where exactly it is, but they are syndicated all through the United States. And these two girls, they're dressed like kind of like vampires, like kind of got a gothy, Tim Burton-y look to them. And they are obviously having the time of their lives, and they're doing puppet shows, and they're reading viewer mail, and the show is just very kind of cheesy and goofy and sweet. It kind of looks like this. My friend did this print for me for Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee. This is kind of what the scene looked like with the little Frankenstein puppet there, you see. And I was so... not moved necessarily. I wasn't getting emotional during this goofiness. I wasn't wanting to cry, but it touched something in me where I said, I want to know who these people are, who every Saturday night, they do this just kind of homemade, like Wayne's World type show that I'm sitting in my living room in Nashville, Tennessee, watching and just having a great time with it. It's such a cozy, fun feeling. So I suddenly started to get an idea for my third book. A story about two girls in Jackson, Tennessee, who have their own TV show on their local public access station where they show cheesy horror movies and do puppet shows and skits and read viewer mail and all sorts of fun stuff. And that was the genesis for the book Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee, my third book. Pure chance. If I had not sat down on my couch that Saturday night and started flipping through channels and happened upon Midnight Mausoleum, I don't know what my third book would be. Not this, for sure. So let me read you a little bit out of Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee here. See how I'm doing on time. I'm doing good on time. All right. So in this scene, let me set up this scene for you a little bit. So you see on the cover of the book, there's this basset hound here. And that belongs to Rain Ravenscroft, a.k.a. Josie. And Delilah Darkwood, a.k.a. Delia, is Josie's best friend. And they are the two hosts of Midnight Matinee, hence the name Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee. So this scene is close to the beginning of the book, and they are planning on that night's episode doing a dog wedding. And the character of Arliss, he's their grouchy producer. Arliss, I picture as being played by David Harbour, who plays Hopper on Stranger Things. I picture that kind of person, that kind of presence, that sort of energy. So this book is in alternating points of view. This chapter is Josie's chapter, and it is, and it's setting up a scene where they're going to do this dog wedding. Someone pounds at the back door. Arliss goes to answer. It's the twins, I call after him. They're supposed to have their friend with another basset with them. Arliss grunts in acknowledgement and opens the door. He steps aside to let them pass. Colt and Hunter McAllen are frequent guests on Midnight Matinee. They don't particularly love the kind of horror movies we show. They're not great friends with Delia and me. They're emphatically not geniuses. But they share one shining, redeeming trait that makes them perfect guests. They're willing to do dumb stuff, no questions asked. It occurred to us to invite them onto our show after they got suspended for riding dirt bikes down the halls of our school. From there, it was no great leap to put on black spandex skeleton costumes and plastic skull masks, and for no compensation of any sort, dance with the most utterly joyous, unfettered abandon you can imagine. Putting on the skeleton costumes is, for them, like putting on a mantle of courage, and they have zero skill as dancers. But they'll just go for it. Anything. They'll try doing splits. Hunter almost took out half our set once, attempting a backflip that he only halfway landed. Which is an apt metaphor for our show, I guess. What up, Joe-ho? Colt goes for the high five. I let him flap in the breeze. Guess how much I enjoy being called Joe-ho. Let's see the dog. In the darkness of the hallway behind him, I hear a jingling of dog tags and a yip. A smallish beagle trots up to me excitedly, followed by his owner. Reflexively, I kneel to pet the dog, scratching him behind the ears. Hey, aren't you a sweetie? Yes, aren't you a sweetie? Then I stand, turn, and face the twins. What is this? I ask in a low voice. I guess so the beagle won't get his feelings hurt? The dog you asked for, Hunter says. I told y'all we needed a basset hound. Yep, Hunter says. So this is a beagle. I say bring me a basset hound. You two Bill Nyes bring me a beagle? I think it would be Bill's Nye, Delia says, joining us. Nice beagle, guys. Thought we asked for a basset hound. She hands Colt and Hunter their costumes. I told them Tater was a beagle, the beagle's owner says. They said it was fine. Beagles and basset hounds are the same thing, just that beagles become basset hounds, Hunter says with an air of unearned authority. What are you talking about? Delia's face is incredulous. That's not even sorta how it works. Yep, like how cats become raccoons, Colt says. In the wild, Hunter adds. I don't know where to begin. Wait, cats become... No, hang on. One thing at a time. You thought beagles get older and shorter and saggier and their ears get longer and we start calling them basset hounds? We're not dog scientists, y'all, Colt says. Hell. It's just our opinion, Hunter says. That beagles become basset hounds, Delia asks. That is your opinion? Yup, they say together. Well, that's not how opinions work, I say. That's your opinion, Hunter says. Just to be clear, Delia says, you two live in a world where animals spontaneously change species and animals within the same species become other types of animals. Our cousin's seen it happen, Hunter says. By the way, let's just go with what y'all are saying and assume that beagles magically transform into basset hounds at a certain point in their lives. I can't believe I'm doing this. Good Lord. This particular beagle has pretty obviously not made the change to basset hound, right? I say like I'm speaking with a very young child. Hunter and Colt would probably look sheepish at this point, but their faces already have a sheep-like quality. So, even in your deeply strange worldview, y'all blew it, I continue. Hunter and Colt look at each other, their exchange glances saying, You want to field this? Did y'all literally split a single brain when you were in the womb and each one of you ended up with half? I ask. This sends them into gales of laughter. They love it when I insult them. They must have some weird crush or something. I think it's why they're so easily persuaded to relinquish their dignity for free on a public access show. They start trying to thwap each other in the nuts. So that is a little bit from Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee, a little bit about me and my journey as an author. So my understanding is most of these videos get viewed the next day. So chances are good that if you're currently watching this video, you're watching it the day after. And if I tell you now, do you have any questions? It's going to be too late. But let me ask the viewers now, if any of you have any questions that I can answer for you before I get back to my day job. So I'm no longer a prosecutor for the state of Tennessee. I'm an environmental lawyer now. I work for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. It's a great job. I work for the Tennessee State Park System. It's a lot of fun. I get to do all sorts of cool and interesting stuff. And as you can imagine, we've been pretty busy lately dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on the state. So all government agencies are just kind of running around trying to get things in order. So do I have any questions out there from our viewers? How did I get the idea for my first book? Oh, that's a good question. So I'll tell you the idea for my first and second book. For the first book, The Serpent King, I kind of cheated a little bit. I went back to my songwriting catalog and I found 2 songs that I thought told more of a story than I had originally told in the song. And I couldn't decide which one of the songs I wanted to turn into a book. So I decided to just mush them both together and put them in the same book because I figured nobody was going to read it anyway. So that's how I got the idea for The Serpent King. Goodbye Days was an interesting one. And in many ways, it was as fortuitous as Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee, how I got the idea for this. So I floated several ideas past my editor. And she shot down each one, probably 4 or 5 ideas for a second book she shot down. So I was stuck without an idea for my second book, and I was under contract to deliver it, which is a very stressful situation. So I was out walking one day, and these 3 big military helicopters flew over my head. So Nashville is on a flight path for these big, for this big military base near Nashville, where the 101st Airborne is based. So military helicopters are always flying over my neighborhood. So these 3 big military helicopters fly over, and I look up at them, and I suddenly get an idea for a book about a young man who grows up in a small southern military town, and he takes it upon himself to go to the families of soldiers who are killed in battle and do a goodbye day with these families, where he pretends to be their son, and they do all the things they wish they got to do with their son before he died, right? So I take that idea to my editor. It's just kind of a half-baked idea, and she says, okay, this is interesting. I like the idea of the goodbye days. I like the idea of somebody trying to have this one last day with the family of somebody where they kind of try to make sense of the loss. But I want it to be more young adult focused because you're a young adult writer. So instead of having it be soldiers, what if it's other high school students? And I said, okay, that's a great idea, because that means that we could make these people with whose families my character does the goodbye days the friends of my main character, right? So he knows these people that he's doing the goodbye day for, and he can give information about them. They can share things. And it can be more of a mutual sort of learning experience. And so that's where I got the idea for what would later become Goodbye Days. And my editor said, oh, and by the way, it would be really interesting if your main character was maybe at fault for their deaths. So that's how I got the idea for those books. I had a question, do I still write the same way? I certainly do. I still write on the phone to and from my work. I still ride the bus. I tried getting a little notebook tablet with a keyboard, but it didn't work. I went back to the phone. So I wrote about 90% of my 4th book on my phone on the bus to and from work. My 4th book is called In the Wild Light, unless the title changes, and titles do change. Rain and Delilah's Midnight Matinee was originally called TV6. So In the Wild Light comes out in summer of 2021, and it's about a young man and his best friend who's a genius, and this genius best friend gets a scholarship to this elite private school, and she refuses to go unless he goes with her. So these two kids from rural East Tennessee go to this elite private school, and it's about their struggles and trials at this school. My main character's grandfather is dying of emphysema. My main character discovers poetry as a way of coping with the losses and traumas in his life. It's kind of my Looking for Alaska meets Dead Poet Society meets Good Will Hunting book. So 3 of my favorite stories, and so that's kind of what that's about. I had a question here. Let me see if I can scroll down. So I have a question. If the Serpent King is a real snake. So in the book The Serpent King, my main character's father is a Pentecostal preacher in a snake handling church. So I don't know if you guys know this. Maybe you do. Maybe you've heard of these churches. But there are Christian churches throughout the South that handle snakes as part of their worship services. It's based on a Bible verse that talks about how if you're a real disciple of Jesus, you can handle snakes and not be harmed. So the people handling snakes that I talk about in this book are handling real snakes. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but hopefully it does. See if there are other questions here. Would I ever write a picture book? Absolutely. I would love to write a picture book. I love picture books. I've actually got an idea for a picture book that I might pitch to my editor one of these days. So I would love to do that. I've got plans to write a middle grade book. So go a little, the age group below YA, I have plans to do that. So I definitely want to explore those other age groups of reading because I was a reader all through my growing up. It was so important to me. So I would definitely write a picture book. I've got the question, where do I get my names? That's a really good question. So in The Serpent King, so sometimes it's a very long and involved process, right? So in The Serpent King, the main character's name is Dillard Wayne Early Jr. Okay? He is the third man in his family to have his name, so I needed his name to be like an old Southern name. I couldn't name him like Jaden or Caden because there are no like old Southern men named Jaden. Like there's no grandpas named Jaden yet. So he had to have a name that sounded old and Southern. And I had this album by this old country singer named Dillard Chandler. So I took his first name, Dillard. I thought that's a good name. His middle name, Wayne, is a name that I would see a lot when I was a prosecutor, unfortunately. Now, if you have the middle name Wayne, it's a great middle name, but I'm telling you that I used to see that middle name a lot in defendants along with the middle name of Ray. So I'd see a lot of Jimmy Rays and Billy Waynes and Stevie Waynes and Stevie Rays, and, you know, I'd see the middle name Wayne a lot. And I wanted to convey the way that life circumstances were stacked against my main character in The Serpent King. So I used the middle name Wayne for that character. And then his last name Early comes from a lady I used to work with named Patience Early, whose name I absolutely loved. I thought it was the coolest name ever. And I always wanted to name a character Patience Early. Even before I knew I was going to write books, I said, if I ever write a book someday, I'm going to name a character Patience Early. But I didn't end up using the name Patience Early. I just ended up using the last name of Early. So that's where I got that name. Other names are just kind of, I like the sound of them. There's the character of Travis Bohannon in The Serpent King. Bohannon is just a good Tennessee name. There's a lot of Bohannons in Tennessee. Travis is just a good country boy name. So, and by the way, folks, if you're interested in hearing more of The Serpent King, I have been reading The Serpent King out loud live on Instagram every other night. So I'm doing it tonight at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time, so that's 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I am on chapter, I don't remember, I'm about 60 pages in. So if you want to join me, we're having a lot of fun doing that. I'm kind of talking about as I'm going along, I'm interrupting myself to talk about where certain inspirations for things in the book came from. So that's a good time. So tonight I'm doing it. I'll be doing it again Thursday night. So anyway, tune in for that. So, I'm told I made a preteen very happy with the answer to her question. Good, good. Tell her I'm very happy that I was able to make them happy. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me. You're amazing. Come follow me on Instagram at Jeff Zentner, JEFFZENTNER. Come follow me on Twitter at Jeff Zentner, JEFFZENTNER. Keep your eyes out for my 4th book coming out in summer 2021. Thank you to the Virginia Children's Book Festival for having me. Guys, I know this is not an easy time. We're all cooped up. We're all scared. It's a scary time. But you know what, guys? We're going to get through it. It's going to be okay. Keep reading books. Keep finding comfort in art. That's where the comfort is. Keep finding comfort in what is beautiful in this world, because there's plenty of ugliness, but find comfort in the things that are beautiful in this world. And thank you so much. Y'all are amazing. Bye-bye.